The vents above him exhaled in tired bursts, casting brief flickers of shadow over the scratched plating of the armory walls. He adjusted his grip on the polishing cloth and leaned in, eyeing the soot-caked edge of the Zyran chestplate like it had personally insulted him. The armor was heavy, jagged, adorned in glyphs that hummed faintly if you stared long enough, though he'd learned not to do that after his third headache. He buffed along the curve, the plasma burn etched into the surface whispering stories of battles he'd only seen in after-action reports. He wasn't supposed to be here. At least not at 02-17, tucked between two crates of surplus Gauss rounds and a barely functioning decon unit that smelled like fried ozone and bad decisions. Technically, he was on a rest cycle. Technically, no one asked him to clean the armor. Technically, he'd given up on caring about technically a long time ago. A faint shift of motion behind him. He didn't have to look. She was always quiet when she entered the room, except for the way the floor seemed to hum a little harder beneath her boots. It wasn't fear. It was the kind of respect steel gave a sharper blade. "You're using the wrong cloth," she said. Her voice had the smoothness of engineered alloy, cold at first but undeniably precise. He glanced up, holding the rag between thumb and forefinger. "Is this a Zyran microfiber consultation, or are you just jealous of my technique?" One eyebrow, not human, sharper, a little angled like a well-forged blade, lifted on her face. Her ears twitched faintly, those long elven arcs catching the flicker of a maintenance light overhead. "You're polishing it in circles. That's inefficient. Circles are calming, that's science. Circles trap heat dispersion patterns and cause plasma irregularities on strike surfaces." "Wow," he said, slowly nodding. "You make insults sound like textbook corrections. I feel smarter and dumber at the same time." She said nothing, but he swore something and her gaze shifted, just a hair, like frost melting under interrogation lights. He returned to the chest plate. Careful strokes, small movements. The war outside this outpost could rage on for 100 years. This moment, in this stale-scented room with her watching, felt louder than orbital bombardments. "You could use the sonic buffer," she offered, now standing closer. He didn't look up. "I could, but it buzzes like an angry mosquito having a nervous breakdown, and it leaves streaks. It's calibrated for Zyran armor. It's also from an era when music was stored on quartz wafers. I trust my hands more." Silence again. He could hear her breathing, slow and even. Efficient, just like everything else about her. But she wasn't in armor now. Just the base layer of her uniform, dark and tight-fitting, a network of reactive fibers that shimmered when they caught the wrong angle. Her hands were folded behind her back. Her posture didn't shift, didn't falter, and yet she stayed. He reached for the left gauntlet, holding it gently, turning it to catch the light. The alien metal was warm. It always was, even in the freezing storage chambers, as if it remembered its last battle, still clinging to residual energy. "Why do you do this?" she asked, after a pause stretched thin enough to snap. He shrugged. "Because it helps me think." "No," she said, voice lowered now, almost unsure. "I mean, why do you treat it like it's sacred?" He looked up, pausing mid-polish. Her expression was unreadable. Zyrans had a way of schooling their faces into blank slabs when they wanted to. "I don't treat the armor like it's sacred," he said. "I treat what it protects like it is." A beat, then another. "That's illogical," she said quietly. "Welcome to the human condition." The gauntlet slipped a little in his grasp as he leaned back, exhaling. "Look, I don't know what the war taught you, but where I come from we fix what we care about. We clean it, mend it. We try to keep it whole, even if we know it's gonna get banged up again tomorrow." She tilted her head. "And what if it doesn't want to be mended?" "Then I wait until it's ready." Another pause. This one stretched even longer, looping around the room like a slow satellite in decaying orbit. He stood, placing the gauntlet carefully beside the rest of the cleaned armor. "You're not just a soldier, even if they tell you that's all you are." She blinked once, not slowly, not dramatically, just enough to register a tiny fracture in the silence between them. I'm efficient, she finally said. He smirked. Yeah, and terrifying. But efficiency doesn't mean you don't deserve to be cared for. For the first time, her gaze dropped. Not much, barely noticeable, but it wasn't fixed like before. It flicked downward briefly, like she was trying to recompile something strange in her internal code. Outside the armory, a klaxon chirped once before realizing it was false and shut itself off again with a digital groan. Somewhere down the corridor, a private yelled at an AI vending unit that had apparently dispensed toothpaste instead of stem gel. Again, the world spun on. She stepped forward close enough now that the edge of her boots brushed his. She reached out, brushing a fingertip across the newly polished chest plate. You missed a spot, she murmured. He leaned closer, squinting. Where? You sure? She pulled her hand back, the corner of her mouth twitching upward, just a little, almost too subtle to call a smile. I'm sure. He chuckled. You just wanted to see if I doubt myself. That's psychological warfare. That's Zyran humor. I'm going to need a translator, he said, preferably one that doesn't also carry plasma blades. Her eyes sparkled faintly. Not literally, though he wouldn't have been surprised if they did. Everything about her seemed calibrated to defy expectations while pretending to be indifferent about it. I'll consider requisitioning one, she said. He reached down, grabbed the rag again, and made an exaggerated show of finding the non-existent smudge. She watched him and for the first time didn't seem like she was studying a battlefield, more like she was watching weather change, something soft, uncontrollable. I'm heading to the simulation bay at 600, she said, just before turning. Cool, he said. I'll be here, still losing the war against grime. She paused at the door. Perhaps next time I'll bring coffee, the kind your species prefers, black and bitter. He tilted his head. That almost sounds like a peace offering. She didn't respond, just nodded once, then disappeared into the corridor like a ghost wrapped in discipline. He looked down at the armor again. Clean now, gleaming under artificial light, still heavy with unspoken weight. You really are precious, he muttered to the empty room and returned to work. Let me get this straight, he said, leaning back against a wall that probably hadn't been scrubbed since the outpost's construction day. Your species builds starships that bend gravity, use language that can collapse neurons if spoken too loudly, and yet, you've never had toast. Her ears twitched, not in annoyance, though with her it was hard to tell, but more like she was trying to process whether toast was a weapon, a code word, or perhaps a threat. We do not scorch our food deliberately. He blinked. It's not scorching. It's complicated. There's a very fine line between perfectly golden brown and emergency fire suppression. It's an art. She tilted her head, arms crossed, clearly unconvinced. Your species seems obsessed with intentionally inefficient methods. That's because the best things in life are inefficient. Love, jazz, pancakes. Have you ever tried flipping a pancake in zero gravity? Pure chaos, beautiful chaos. Her expression didn't change, but her eyes flicked toward the corner of the rec room, where the old food synthesizer was whirring uncertainly to itself like it knew they were talking about it. He sighed, grabbing the portable toaster he'd borrowed from engineering. It made an ominous sound when plugged in, like a small engine trying to remember how to scream. All right, for science and diplomacy, we toast. She watched the process as if he were activating a wormhole generator. When the first slice of bread popped up, uneven, slightly too dark, she stared at it like it might hiss. He handed it to her with the ceremonial seriousness of a relic exchange. She sniffed it. It smells burnt. Good, he said. That means it worked. She bit it cautiously, then paused. Slowly and with the expression of someone experiencing an alien mind meld, she said, It tastes like disappointment, but comforting. He beamed. That's the most accurate description I've ever heard. A soft beep sounded overhead, routine alert. Nothing urgent. The outpost's AI chimed in a voice that had been set cruelly to cheerful grandmother mode. Don't forget to hydrate, darlings. Dehydration leads to muscle cramps and interspecies misunderstandings. She blinked up at the ceiling. Is your station's intelligence maternal? No one knows who programmed her. There's a theory she used to run a daycare before getting uploaded. That would explain the passive-aggressive bedtime reminders, she said. They sat in silence for a bit longer, the smell of burnt toast lingering with surprising comfort. He glanced at her armor, stacked neatly on the bench beside them, and nudged it with his boot. Did you ever name it? Name what? Your armor, your gear, your rifle. Don't tell me your people don't do that. We designate numerical identifiers. Efficient. That's tragic. Mine's called Betsy. She's a little beat up, complains during long hikes, but she's got character. She raised an eyebrow. You anthropomorphize ballistic weapons. We do more than that. We celebrate them. There's a guy in Delta Company who writes poetry about his sniper rifle. Real weepy stuff. Sonnets even. And yet you wonder why the galaxy finds humans confusing. Confusing is better than boring. She didn't argue. Later, he found himself in Maintenance Bay 6, staring at a busted drone that kept spinning in circles, whining softly. The Zyran woman entered wordlessly, watching the drone with him. After a long beat, she said, "It reminds me of Commander Tilrex." He looked over. "Friend of yours. Leader of the 6th Fracture Battalion. Brave, ruthless, could not walk straight, inner ear defect." He snorted. "A war hero with vertigo. There's a sitcom in that somewhere." There was nothing comedic about it. Unless he attempted stares, then it was, sometimes comedic. He chuckled, reaching down to silence the drone. "Maybe we're not so different." "You still eat paste disguised as meat," she reminded him. "Touché." They spent the next hour reprogramming the drone, occasionally stopping to argue about command syntax. Hers was elegant, cascading with logic. His was more trial and error, like throwing digital spaghetti at the wall to see what stuck. You cannot nest a conditional inside an override loop. "Watch me. It will explode." That's part of the process. When the drone finally stopped spinning, hovering midair with a quiet hum, she actually gave a nod of approval. Functional. He tapped its side. "See, teamwork." The lights dimmed slightly. Shift transition. The AI cooed from the ceiling. "Time to stretch those legs, sweethearts. Blood clots are unfashionable." She rose, collecting her gloves. He hesitated. "You ever think about what happens when this all ends?" he asked. "The war, the posts, the missions." She paused. "There is no after in Zyran doctrine, only the next." "That's depressing. It's efficient. I feel like we've had this conversation before." She didn't smile exactly, but something shifted in her posture. "And yet you still hope for something more." "Always." She nodded once. "Then perhaps I'll keep observing." "Observing me or toast?" She turned without answering, stepping into the corridor like she had all the stars to inspect. The drone hummed in place, still spinning ever so slightly to the left. He watched her go, unsure if he'd won an argument or lost one. Either way, he was pretty sure she'd be back for breakfast. The klaxon started screaming at 400. Not the polite, half-apologetic beep of a systems check, or the whiny protest of the AI announcing, "Incoming mild inconvenience." No, this was the full-volume banshee wail. Someone broke something big, kind of alarm that made even hardened Marines spill their synth coffee and cuss in 3 languages. He didn't even get his boots on before the bulkhead lights shifted from sleepy blue to angry red, strobing across his quarters like a bad nightclub on a worse planet. He stumbled into the corridor, one boot on, one in hand, and nearly collided with a private who looked one glitch away from passing out. "Training drill?" he asked hopefully. "Negative," the private wheezed. "Sector 7 just vented atmosphere. Breach in the dome. External contact detected. Maybe hostiles, maybe rocks with attitude." He finished putting on the second boot in a single curse-filled motion and bolted down the corridor toward the armory. Halfway there, the outpost AI chimed in its usual grandmotherly tone. "Sweethearts, do remember to engage your helmets. Space does not care about your hair." He skidded into the armory. She was already there, fully suited. helmet under one arm, long ears framed by the undersuit's collar like carved obsidian. Her armor hummed faintly as the inner plating adjusted pressure for outer vacuum conditions. "You took your time," she said without turning. "Sorry, I was busy being rudely awakened by the universe," he replied, diving for his gear. "Did someone order spontaneous decompression, or was that just Thursday's special?" Telemetry indicates something entered the outer shell. Organic readings, fast, unfamiliar. "Aliens?" he said before realizing who he was talking to. Other aliens." She tossed him a thermal clip. "You'll need this." He caught it and slid it into his sidearm. You always know how to make a guy feel special. Together, they moved out, boots thudding down the magnetized corridors as the warning lights painted them red with every step. The path to Sector 7 was sealed under emergency lockdown, but she bypassed it with a flick of her wrist, inserting a small spike drive into the access panel. The door hissed open just enough for them to slip through. Beyond the door, silence waited, not the peaceful kind, the suffocating, airless kind that made your heart thump louder just to hear something familiar. They advanced slowly. He held his weapon close, pulse sensor blinking with tension. She moved like vapor, silent, eyes scanning, shoulders tight. Then something thudded behind them. He spun. Nothing. She tilted her head. "It's moving along the ceiling." "I hate when they move along the ceiling." "I told you to update your visor's thermal filters. And I told you to try caffeine. We all ignore good advice sometimes." A ripple passed across the upper vent system. Then a shriek, a screeching warble that made his brain itch. Something dropped like liquid metal, slamming between them and unfolded into legs. Too many legs, and no face. "Yup," he muttered, backing up. "Definitely not here for a friendly chat." She lunged first, no battle cry. Just motion, brutal and elegant. Her blade, a retractable construct of pulsed light, flared into being and severed two of the creature's limbs in one stroke. It screamed again, the sound like melting glass. He fired at the torso, whatever that was, watching plasma bolts burst against armor like skin. The thing retaliated, flailing in an arc that caught him across the shoulder, throwing him into the wall. Dazed, he blinked up as it bore down on her, but she didn't move. She waited. The moment it pounced, she dodged sideways and drove her blade into what might have been a throat. The creature spasmed once, then dropped. He stood, groaning. "So, that wasn't in the manual." "They don't write manuals for unknown entities," she said, breathing steady. "You okay?" "Think my spine's trying to apply for early retirement, but yeah, I'm good." They stared down at the thing. It shimmered faintly, like it wasn't fully there. A phase creature, maybe. Something pulled in through the edge of a warp corridor. It didn't matter. What mattered was that it wasn't alone. Motion. Sensors flared, 3 more coming fast. She didn't hesitate. Neither did he. This time they moved like a unit. She danced between them, blades singing, while he kept their flanks clear with precise bursts. One creature tried to scale the wall. He nailed it mid-jump, grinning like a lunatic. 10 points for style. Stop celebrating and focus. I can multitask. Eventually, silence reclaimed the corridor. The bodies, or what passed for them, were already disintegrating into oily puddles. His visor flickered once, then stabilized. She looked down at the mess. "You realize these things weren't native?" "Oh, I figured. Local wildlife doesn't usually have extra-dimensional distortion fields. They followed something here. Or someone." He sighed. "Of course they did." They made their way back to Central Command, silence stretching between them like a bridge too far. The emergency was contained, but the implications weren't. They knew that. So did the brass. Already the command deck was buzzing with analysts, engineers, and one guy from intelligence who always smelled like mint and fear. Later, in the now-quiet mess hall, he sat at their usual table, holding 2 mugs. She arrived without announcement and took the one labeled, "Contain Your Existential Dread." He took "Don't Panic Yet." "So," he said, swirling the dark liquid, "another day in paradise. There are worse postings." "True. This one at least has decent toast." She sipped, then said, "You fought well." He blinked. "Wow, praise from the Zyran Ice Queen. Should I mark this day on a calendar?" It was not intended to be mockery. He smiled. "I know. I just like seeing if I can get you to threaten me." She gave him a long look. "You wouldn't survive the attempt." There it is. They sat together, watching the stars blink on the display window. Somewhere out there, more things waited. But for now there was quiet, and coffee, and burnt toast if someone was desperate. He bumped her elbow with his. "You ever think maybe you were meant for more than this?" She didn't answer right away. Then finally, "Maybe I was. Or maybe this is what more looks like, and I never recognized it." He blinked. "Okay, that was kind of profound. Did the AI give you a philosophy module?" "No, just toast." He laughed, and she almost did too. The first time he saw her again, she was upside down. Not metaphorically, literally suspended by magnetic boots from the hull of a decommissioned shuttle in Docking Bay 2, arms folded, helmet off, looking far too composed for someone defying gravity over a 20-meter drop. He blinked twice, just to make sure the recycled caffeine hadn't finally melted his frontal lobe. "You're back," he said, voice echoing off the walls. "I never truly left," she replied, as if speaking from the ceiling was standard conversation protocol. "That sounds very poetic, and not at all like someone who skipped 2 months of toast-related diplomatic progress." She dropped with the elegance of a falling feather, and landed with a soft thud. Her ears twitched once as she turned to face him. "I was called to lead the Vanguard Fleet's detachment at the Celian Rift," she said. "Ah, fancy space business, and not even a postcard." "I was not aware postcards were still operational in your sector." He folded his arms. "We make do, a doodle on scrap paper, maybe a haiku, something to say, 'Hey, I didn't get consumed by an interdimensional monstrosity today, how about you?'" She studied him. "You're different." He raised an eyebrow. What gave it away, the new haircut or the subtle aura of existential dread? "You're less chaotic. I call it maturity. Also, I stopped using the vending unit as a decision-making oracle." "That is indeed progress." They stood in silence for a moment longer than comfortable. Then he gestured toward the corridor. "Come on, the mess has upgraded. We have actual eggs now. I think. They might still be synth, but they look like eggs, which counts for something." She followed, quiet as ever. He led her through the familiar maze of steel and stubborn bulkheads. Same hum of the reactor underfoot. Same occasional flicker in corridor C3 that everyone pretended wasn't ominous. The same old AI greeted them in a grandmotherly tone that somehow managed to sound both relieved and vaguely judgmental. "Welcome back, dear. Try not to break anything this time." "I'm not making any promises," he muttered. They entered the mess, which, to his amazement, was almost full. The place buzzed with conversation, clattering utensils, and a sort of optimism that was rare and fragile in places like this. He grabbed 2 trays and passed one to her. She inspected it with the same caution she used with weapons-grade materials. "It's still warm." That's the power of culinary engineering, and a very bored quartermaster. They sat at their old spot, corner booth, partial view of the stars. She sipped something vaguely resembling tea. He chewed on what he hoped was a protein bar and not a repurposed packing material. "I heard about what you did on Telvar 6, he said after a beat. "That skirmish in the gravity wells. You turned the tide." She tilted her head. "I was part of a team." "Don't be modest. The whole outpost's been buzzing. They say you walked into a kinetic crossfire like it was a drizzle and got 30 wounded off-world under bombardment." "There were only 27. He whistled. "Still, that's 3 more than I've ever saved, unless you count the time I stopped Jenkins from marrying that alien fungus he met on leave." Her mouth twitched, not quite a smile but a ripple. "You've changed as well." "Yeah," he said, quiet now. "You know how it goes. One near-death experience, a few close calls, a handful of aliens trying to eat your soul, and suddenly you start thinking maybe there's more to life than cleaning other people's armor." She looked at him, really looked. "Why did you do it?" What, clean your armor? Yes, I told you. I want to hear it again. He paused, then leaned back, hands resting on the tray like he was anchoring himself to the moment. Because you matter, he said. Not just because you're skilled, or powerful, or terrifying in battle, but because somewhere under all that armor, literal and otherwise, there's someone who forgot she could be more than a weapon. Someone who needed to be seen, not as an asset but as a person. The mess faded around them. Noise dulled. People became background. For a moment, the only two people in the galaxy were sitting across from each other with a cooling cup of synth tea and a half-eaten egg approximation between them. She exhaled, a slow, intentional breath. My people still see affection as vulnerability, she said. They speak in strategy, not sincerity. Sounds exhausting. It is. Well, lucky for you, humans are pathologically emotional. It's like a design flaw we've weaponized. That earned him a flicker of a smirk. You remain inefficient. And yet here we are. She tapped her tray with one finger. I may return to the Vanguard. They've requested me as a liaison for hybrid operations. Big promotion. Big responsibility. He nodded. You gonna take it? She didn't answer immediately. Then, only if the mess hall there serves toast. He grinned. That's the most human thing you've ever said. She tilted her head. Is that a compliment? Only the best kind. Silence again. But it was the comfortable kind now, the kind